Hi, I'm Morton. I'll be talking about maintaining a global supply chain, case study 1 for Apple. So, the supply chain for the iPhone, just a brief overview of Apple's supply chain and what sets it apart. Apple has an exclusivity agreements with multiple suppliers. Uh, it secures essentially its supplies with all of its suppliers, and they have it all signed off. So they're able to pull their material exactly when they need it. Cost of final assembly. The assembly happens in Asia. Foxconn, the person who does the final assembly, will wake up their workers in the middle of the night just to meet their demand, working grueling hours. The cost of materials and control over your suppliers costs about $8 for that final assembly, and the role of Flextronics practically owns their employees in providing housing on site and launch shifts to ensure demand is met at all times. This is kind of the control that Apple has with its suppliers. Apple's competition. In terms of competition, Samsung is their biggest competitor. With the data that's provided in the case study, BlackBerry and Nokia are kind of dismal in comparison. Their returns are very weak and don't much show a threat to Apple. In terms of Apple, we have a much higher inventory turn than all of the other suppliers, as well as return on assets, return on equity, and return on stockholder equity. We're showing strong growth, and there's a bit of a plummet in 2013, but even then, we're still above the competition. So, Apple's key advantages. Their first main advantage is their key buying power. Apple will buy their requirements outright to just secure demand, so everything that they need, they already have supplied. And they'll even buy the supplier's loyalty, just straight out buying the supplier to ensure that this person only focuses on Apple and Apple alone. The next key advantage I want to talk about is their cheap material, which is 21.9% of their total sales, and labor costs, which is 5.3%. The rest is just strictly profit after those two. Very high margins for profit on the key sales. And then another key advantage for Apple is direct shipments and reverse logistics. Apple finds it much more easier to ship directly to the customer store instead of at retailers, and they find more sales this way, as well as their reverse logistics, where the customer requests to return material. They ship the box straight to that customer. The customer packs up that material and sends it back, and it goes straight to the QA team to take a look at, repair, and then send back. This also helps to ensure the success of their quality. So, I want to talk next about Apple's future challenges. Samsung is growing. If you look back at that one chart, challenges so far, Samsung's growing much larger. It's making a brand name for itself and is starting to pull customers away from Apple. With that, Apple is going to have to maintain innovations. Almost their brand is deteriorating. People are moving over to Android over Apple, and they need to provide new product development to ensure innovations are above standard and going above and beyond what the customer is demanding. As well as that, they need to maintain their supplier relationships. There's in this case study, it brings up there's multiple suppliers that just outright deny their exclusivity agreements and just denying pre-purchase as they don't see profits just focusing on Apple, as well as multiple different final assembly locations. This case study brought up riots in the assembly locations. This can really lead into bad publicity for Apple. So Apple shouldn't be seen as a low morality company, as they have a huge supply base, and the ongoing idea of making sure your workers are happy is key to business nowadays. So I'd like to talk about my executive dashboard. As you see on the right-hand side, it's a very neat, simple dashboard that provides the sales by region for 2018, and this just points out which regions are our biggest sales areas, that being the Americas, Europe, and then it breaks down to the different locations in Asia. Next is sales by product in 2018. This shows a huge percentage for iPhone sales, that being Apple's biggest product right now. This would be a good viewing for the CEO, just to understand where his market lies, or maybe even where to start focusing their new developments to push iPad sales, to push Mac sales, or even just completely discontinue some products as they're not selling as great as others. After that, we are looking at the Apple sales. This provides the net sales, the cost of sales, and the complete margin between the two. And then I have a line going across, and that's our net income. So it just compares the three main indicators, that being sales, margins, and cost of sales. And then the net income across the board, just showing the growth of the company. The last graph is the iPhone sales. I found this very interesting, and a really important thing being that iPhone is our biggest product seller. I highlighted in green the Q1 sales for the last few years, which show peak sales. That is something that we should really bring up to the CEO to, get his attention on pushing products directly at the start of quarter one and preparing, as we slowly dip once we hit to quarter three, and then we pick up once quarter one comes. And then finally at the bottom, I have the key latest metrics that show your inventory turns, your DIO, your DSO, DPO, CCC, ROA, ROA with no cash or equivalents, ROE, and ROS. And it compares it to the competitors' metrics. I have a macro where you select the radio buttons, and this switches over based on your selection, and then does a quick comparison of the two, and is conditionally formatted at the bottom to say if it's green, then Apple's doing better, and if it's red, Apple needs to improve. So recommendations to BXV Capital VP Philip Duchens. Apple has growing sales volume each year. So 2009, there was 36,657,000 to 2011, which had 108,249,000 to 2018, which had 170,910,000. It's exponentially growing year by year, and this is just a brief example that I would like to show. With that, stocks will only grow. Your return on stockholder equity is the highest between all competitors. In 2013, Apple had 21.7%, if you see in the graph beside you, compared to Samsung's, which is 13.3%. It still shows to be dominating the markets. But it is looking like it's starting to plateau, which leads me to believe that the push of new product development and customer satisfaction should be huge to start generating more growth, as well as looking to reduce costs, as this could be reducing profits, affecting the returns that we can bring to the stockholders. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you for taking the time to listen. Thanks. Bye.